All right, we'll call the meeting to order. First of all, I just wanted to let everybody know the purpose of the meeting here today. We respect that, or ask rather that you respect the parameters of the meeting. As you know, there have been ongoing discussions about the EMS service being transferred to Lakeview Hospital under the umbrella of Health Partners. This is an ongoing conversation. I do want to state this at the outset. No decisions have been made yet. What we're doing is putting together language to get in front of the City Council so that the City Council can vote this up or down. Part of what's happened is that the county has weighed in on this relative to the communication piece and how Lakeview would communicate with the county communication system if in fact Lakeview were to take over the EMS service. So what we're here today to do, what we're trying to do is, and the reason that we have the people invited here, the supervisors from the service area that are affected, as well as municipal leaders that are affected by the communications piece that was sent out by Mr. Steve Tkach, who's seated right here, and we wanted to discuss the implementation of any type of communication system. We wanted to see if in fact there was a way that Lakeview can communicate with the county. The county has taken the position that they cannot or will not, and so we wanted to discuss that piece today among the people who are affected by this decision. So for the people that are going to be discussing this, please keep your questions that you have confined to the communication piece. This is not a forum on whether the city and its partners should be transferring the system, all right? So with that, I would like to call John Muller up here, or Nate, whoever would like to discuss the letter that was sent out by the county, what your response to that is, and then we'll take questions from the people that are affected.
Good morning. I've not met all of you, so it's nice to meet you. My name is John Muller. I'm the EMS manager at Lakeview Hospital. I've been with Lakeview for 30 years. I've been in this role for 20 years. Really what I want to talk about is the letter that I received, a certified letter from Steve Tkach, a 3-page letter basically informing us of the rules that Lakeview will need to abide by if we become the EMS provider for the city of Hudson. And obviously we have a lot of questions in regards to this letter and these requirements, because currently these requirements don't happen today to any other service in the county. So it's confusing to why we would, if this deal goes through and Lakeview becomes a provider, we have to abide by these rules. So, you know, I guess the first issue is that Lakeview currently is not following the requirements of the county, and again, we're unaware of that. I should give you some history. So Lakeview EMS, Lakeview Hospital owns Lakeview EMS under the umbrella of Health Partners. In 1984, Lakeview Hospital took over the ownership of the former Stillwater Ambulance Service. That was a privately run ambulance service. That was prior to my time. And back in those days, the Stillwater Ambulance Service was a contracted service for the Apple River. So they primarily had a contract to sit on the Apple River. I think the owners of the campgrounds paid to have that ambulance sit there every day during the floating season. And we had a smaller portion of the county that we covered, a portion of St. Joe's and a portion of Somerset. And then that was shared with New Richmond and Hudson back in those days. So I'll just refer to, in my tenure from 1988, again, our service has been dispatched by St. Croix County. Back in the early days when I started in '88, the way we were dispatched by St. Croix County was by phone. So St. Croix County, if there was a call within our service area, they would get on the phone and call Lakeview Hospital. The phone rang in our EMS quarters. We answered the phone. They gave us the address. We went on the call. As technology's improved and our service continued to grow, we quickly grew out of that model, because when the ambulances were out on calls, the phones got transferred up to the nursing station. And no disrespect to nurses, but when the 911 phone rang and they were busy with a patient, the patient would take priority over the 911 call. So we couldn't continue to operate that model. At that time, we had approached Washington County to see if they would be willing to take all of our calls for us and manage our dispatching. They agreed to do that. I'm not sure what year that was. It was maybe 1990. So then the process changed. What St. Croix County, when there was a call in the county, they would call Washington County. Washington County would then call us on the phone, and we would go out. Within a few years, we actually went on the Washington County paging system. So same process. St. Croix County would call Washington County, they would page Lakeview out, and we would, all of our dispatching would be done on the Washington County frequencies and channels. If there were any times that the dispatchers needed to contact us, they would do that via radio on the St. Croix County Fire Channel. As our service continued to grow, I'm going to jump forward a number of years. We became the primary EMS provider for the city of North St. Paul. A couple of years of being the provider in North St. Paul, being in Ramsey County. So now we're being dispatched in Ramsey County, Washington County, and St. Croix County. And our volume continues to grow. At that point, Ramsey County was talking about the 800 megahertz radio system that they were soon going to implement. That was going to be a statewide radio system for the entire state of Minnesota. And we immediately saw some problems with that. Being on 3 different radio systems in 3 different counties and trying to manage our day-to-day operations that way, we knew that was not going to work. That would mean carrying 2 portable radios, pagers in each one of the counties, or that are tripped by each one of the counties. It physically wasn't possible to operate that way. We approached North Memorial Transportation and Alina Transportation back then and asked if they would have any interest in doing our complete dispatching services. North Memorial turned us down. They said they were not interested. They had the capability, but were not interested in doing that. Alina Transportation was very interested. Their reasoning behind that is Alina Transportation had just lost the largest lawsuit in Minnesota history to an EMS provider. It was an $11 million lawsuit on a dispatching error. Alina's leadership told us this story, that we took that $11 million loss and built a dispatch center that was the most state-of-the-art dispatch center in the state, so that we never have that happen again. So obviously that was very exciting to us, to have our own dispatch center and have the capabilities that they have that nobody else has was a no-brainer for us to make that move. It centralizes all of our operations into one dispatch center. All of the PSAPs, St. Croix County, Washington County, Ramsey County, call into one number and give the information, and then we're paged out. So we agreed to do that. It was very expensive for us to do that, But the assurance that we had, the quality assurance, everything that goes along with the dispatching, it was worth the money that we're paying to have that dispatching today. And I bring that up out of the importance of how important that dispatching is to us. We can't operate our business without it. To the level that we operate today, to the high level and the quality of service we provide, we need to have that dispatching service. So fast forward to today, when we received this letter, basically in the letter, the last paragraph says that St. Croix County Dispatch will cease regular telephone contact with a line of transportation if Lakeview Service, upon Lakeview Service becoming the provider in Hudson. Well, basically in this letter, the county has informed us that they will not give us our calls anymore. And I guess, I don't know that they have the legal authority to do that, so that's one of our questions. Can that be answered or not? Do we not? Is that not the forum we want to take?
Well, Kathy McKittrick, our city council, is not here today, but I do know that she is looking into the legality of that position.
Okay. So I jumped to the end of the letter because I think that was one of the more important pieces of it. I think the other important thing for everyone to be aware of, throughout the United States and Wisconsin, it is very, very common that EMS dispatching is on a separate dispatching channel. They're not always intermixed with county dispatch centers. It states that in all the literature. If you look at the national dispatching regulations, it says a primary PSAP's requirement is to notify the provider that provides service to the area. So, again, that's confusing to us how they can do that. The other piece of this is I've never heard of a county dispatch center requiring a service to be dispatched through their dispatch center, which in the letter they're requiring us to, if the deal goes through, then we need to be dispatched through the county.
So you don't know of any other system that requires that? Any other county?
I don't know of any county that requires, physically tells someone you have to be dispatched through our county or we're not giving you your calls. And again, we cover a small area, but I do work in a metropolitan area that work with a lot of providers that have worked all over the country, and no one's ever heard anyone being mandated to be dispatched through a dispatch center.
John, you had said that capabilities that Alina has, no one else has?
Yeah, so I think at the March 27th meeting, I talked about the 800 megahertz system, and I could stand here today on my portable radio and talk to someone on the Canadian border. That's not an Alina system. That's the state of Minnesota, the Armor system that they're on, and St. Croix County is not on that system. The state of Wisconsin is not on that system. My point to bring that up is our dispatching, our radio system is so reliable that we have that ability to talk anywhere in the state, including in Wisconsin. When the state of Minnesota when Washington County went to the 800 system a couple years after Ramsey County, they actually built the 800 system out into Wisconsin. I don't know the exact mileage, but I was told 30 miles down the interstate in case there was ever any car chases or anything that came in to Wisconsin from the Minnesota side, they would still have that interoperability. So the system does, there is processes in place that the 800 system can work with the VHF's system. I think case in point, the big warehouse fire that occurred in North Hudson, where they had multiple fire agencies from Minnesota respond. All those agencies were on the 800 system. Communication was an issue. And I think the fix afterwards was to put some 800 operability stuff in the St. Croix County Communications Center so that they can communicate back and forth. We've done drills with that system. We've done drills in cooperation with St. Croix County and Washington County. At least 2 drills that I remember using that system. And then there's been some actual events that that system has been utilized. But as far as our day-to-day operation, if we were in St. Croix County, the purpose of the 800 system is to communicate with our dispatch center, our main hub of our entire daily operations. It's not to communicate with St. Croix County. If any of our ambulances need to communicate with St. Croix County, we utilize the St. Croix County frequencies. There was, I think in the letter it states that Lakeview had permission to utilize the channels and the frequencies, and that has kind of fell by the wayside. And I don't have an answer to that. I'm not aware of that because I know that dispatch still frequently calls us on that channel. This is just for your information. This is a fleet map. The fleet map is the channel frequencies in our radios. So in this portable radio, these are the frequencies that are in that radio. All of our ambulances have the same radios, and they have mobiles as well. The mobile radios are all programmed the same. So the colored, everything up to 8C is all on the 800 system. And then the VHF 2 and VHF 1 are all specific to Wisconsin. So we currently operate with all the and some of these frequencies, maybe the names may have changed on some of these frequencies. This fleet map is dated 2014, so I think it's up to date, but anyways, that just shows that we have the capability to communicate with the dispatch center. The difference between the two systems is, I guess in layman's terms, if you watch HD TV and then go to a hotel and they have standard definition, you clearly see the difference. It's night and day. The 800 radio system and the VHF system is night and day. When I'm at Somerset Amphitheater and we're down in the Grove and I'm standing next to the police chief and the fire chief and St. Croix County pages them out for a call, they're all holding their radios in the air trying to find the frequency. I can still hear our dispatch. Again, night and day difference between the systems.
Does the system track the individual vehicles?
I'm sorry?
Does the system track the individual ambulances where they're at?
Yeah, so on our dispatch side, so again, that's the radio system. So again, with my 800 radio, I still have the capability to communicate with the dispatch center. And in the letter, it's stating we don't have that capability. All of our ambulances do. They always have had it. So back to the dispatch center, one of the things that's key about our dispatch center is every movement of the ambulance is recorded. All of our ambulances have automatic vehicle locators on them. And in the dispatch center, there's a screen as big as that wall that you see the ambulances move throughout the entire service area. Everything's GPS tracked. Inside the ambulance, there's a CAD system in our ambulance that's part of our dispatching. When a call comes out, the call is sent to the ambulance, and they see the same map. It maps them to the call. It tracks all our other vehicles. Again, there's no other dispatch center right now in this area that operates at that high level of dispatching. To the point where if we were to not utilize that system anymore, we would go back 10 years in time of the way we're operating today. And frankly, we're not going to do that.
John, is that separate? And I didn't mean to, I don't know if you had something.
No, that's all right. No.
Is that separate from the 800 megahertz system, or is that integrated with, is that because you have the 800?
No, the 800 is separate. The 800 that's just our communication back and forth to the dispatch center. So the AVL system is actually on a UHF frequency. I'm not a tech savvy guy, so I don't know all the ins and outs of how that works. But there's numerous pieces to our dispatch center. I'll give you some examples of the technology. So if St. Croix County calls into our dispatch center and gives our dispatcher a call, as the dispatcher's typing the call in while they're on the phone with the caller, if that is not a true address in St. Croix County, it will flag it. And it will our dispatcher will tell St. Croix County that's not an actual address in St. Croix County. That's how sophisticated it is. Is that always happen? No. But what Alina told me here 2 months ago when we met with them, we were talking about the mapping system, and they said right now they get the best GIS mapping out of St. Croix County because your former GIS person left the county and now works for Alina. So he puts in all their GIS information into their system. Point of that is, again, that's a very sophisticated system, and we've had multiple times in Washington County where everyone uses cell phones now, so you're not getting that hard line detection of where the call's coming from based on the address. And someone will say, I'm in Stillwater, and they give the address. Well, Stillwater and Bayport have a lot of similar addresses, exact street, exact number. Alina's system, they type it in, and it comes up as, it defaults to a Bayport address. Big difference for us. You know, it can be 5 miles difference. So the Alina dispatcher will say, well, that's coming up as a Bayport address, not a Stillwater address. Washington County dispatcher doesn't have the technology, and they're saying the caller is telling me they're in Stillwater. So you end up sending 2 rigs to 2 different locations. Again, the system is very sophisticated. For us to go back to a county system, and there's no, I'm not degrading what the county system is or how they operate. Alina paid a lot of money for that system, and a lot of the county systems don't have that technology. So that's my point to that. The day-to-day operation that we do, I don't have to worry about really anything. I get automatic notifications. If I get 2 ambulances that go out on a call, I immediately get a text on my phone from dispatch just advising me that we have multiple rigs on an event. If there's major incidents that happen, my day-to-day operations are done by our dispatch. Mutual aid. Our mutual aid, there's been a lot of talk about Lakeview only gives away so much mutual aid because you hold the calls so that you can keep everything within your own system. Absolutely not true. It's all automated. So when our dispatcher gets a call and we're out of trucks, they take the information down because we track all of it. They immediately tell the dispatcher, Lakeview's out of trucks, you need to start New Richmond or Hudson. It's an automated thing. it pops up, the minute they type the address in, it pops up and says who the mutual aid agency is. Our dispatch does not have to call anyone. They don't have to call me to find out who they're going to send it to. It's an automated thing. Are there variances to that? Absolutely. The variances are, we know what our mutual aid services can do. We have a service right now that does maybe 30 calls a year, mutual aid. They're the closest service to us. They are really struggling right now in staffing. And we know that if we're calling them for mutual aid, it could be 15 to 20 minutes before they get an ambulance on the road. In those situations, we will start the mutual aid, and then if we can't verify that they're going, then we'll start someone else to it. So there are some differences there, but usually it's an immediate phone call. The minute it comes into dispatch, they know we're out of trucks because they see all the trucks. The other piece of that could be the ambulance may only be 5 minutes from a hospital. And again, we track all of our data. We know how long it takes Hudson to get into our service area, New Richmond to get into our service area on mutual aid, because we track it all. If that ambulance is 5 minutes from the hospital, the dispatcher will say, we have another call. Are you guys able to drop the patient, or are you going to be delayed at the hospital? If the crew is going to be delayed, the mutual aid goes. If they can drop the patient, turn around and go in service, then we'll keep the call. Again, the county systems, I can't speak 100% for St. Croix County, but from what I do know, in most cases, they need to ask somebody who they should start for mutual aid. That's how it works in Washington County. Ramsey County, it doesn't work that way. It's all automated as well.
So, John, to get back to the communication piece with the county then, so
Yep.
what is a solution to that? Would you have a solution to working with the county?
Well, I think I do. Again, I don't know what their concerns are. To me, this came out of nowhere. So I've never received a phone call from the county dispatch center complaining about our response times. And if there were issues, I would think that the county would call and say, hey, we got a complaint here, or something to that extent. And we've not ever had that happen. So I don't know what the issue is. I think I can speak from my own personal knowledge of the way we do our dispatching, and I'll refer it to when we switched over with Washington County. We had a great relationship with Washington County, both the Sheriff's Department and the dispatch center, which operates under the Sheriff's Department. But a lot of times our crews would go over there at night. They'd bring them stuff. I mean, we're just a few blocks away. It's not that we wouldn't do it for St. Croix County, but they're not in our backyard. When we notified the county that we were going to switch to the 800 system, the dispatchers were very hurt by that, and felt that they were going to lose a piece of what they were doing. And we did. We all did. And the thing is, when we switched to Alina before Washington County was on the 800 system, and they lost all communications with us that we normally had every day. And I'll back up a little bit there. One of the issues that we had being dispatched by Washington County is when we first started, everything was great. 6 years into that business, the sheriff came to us and said, you guys are using the radio way too much. We went from 5,000 calls a year on the EMS side to 90,000, not calls, but transmissions into the dispatch center. Our operation was overwhelming Washington County Dispatch Center. They could not handle all of our day-to-day, just we're en route, we're in service, we're back in service. That was overwhelming, and they had the statistics. And when I brought it to my administrator at the hospital, he looked at that and said, wow, I would have an issue with that too. So again, to pull EMS off of that system really gave Washington County a break, and they could focus more on the fire departments and the police operations. That's the same thing that when I look at St. Croix County, the same thing. So the piece that I know that the dispatchers lose is that piece of not knowing if the ambulance is coming or not. So when it was maybe within 6 months of us being under the Alina operation, now on this new 800 system, I had talked to, I don't think it was Terry Anderson, but I think it was Casey Swetlick, and I had offered 800 radio counsel that could be put into their dispatch center. And I take it back. It might be when Washington County switched over, so that was 18 months later. At the time, because I knew that Washington County had an agreement with St. Croix County to put some of that 800 system in their dispatch center, so I offered up our channel, our dispatch channel. That way, the St. Croix County dispatchers, when they called Alina, our dispatch gave them the call, they would physically hear us getting dispatched. They would hear everything. And at the time, again, I believe it was Casey, said we don't have room in our system to do that. And I understood that, but I was never asked again. They actually never asked, we offered it up.
The county, the St. Croix County
St.
said
Croix
that they
County,
did
yeah.
not have the room capacity.
I don't know I don't know how their council's set up, so I'm not sure. He said we don't have room for it in our.
Any idea, was that prior to the new communication system?
I don't know, Steve, I saw Terry, I thought earlier. Oh, Terry.
Right now, there's no room in the current system. The new system will have the capability to accommodate more equipment for that, exactly like John's indicated.
And if, just for, may I ask?
Terry Anderson, I'm the Emergency Communications Manager for St. Croix County.
Okay. And so when will that new system be in place?
It's tentatively scheduled for the end of July, August. It's still flexing the timetable on that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Terry. So anyways, we offered that up, and it wasn't possible that could happen. And I think that, I think we should still do that. I think we should pursue that, whether the Hudson thing goes through or not. It should be done. It is a great reassurance for them to know that. Washington County still has declined it. They said we don't have a need for it. When we call you, we know you're going to show up. So again, Washington County does the same thing. They hail the ambulance on the fire channel if they need it. If they're relaying information back to the ambulance or the fire department, it's always they put the information out. They'll say, Washington County to Stillwater Fire and Lakeview Ambulance responding to whatever. And either one will answer up first and acknowledge that we copied it. So they don't have to call back and forth to the dispatch center. And that is a policy in our operation. We encourage our staff, anytime you have a question, if you're on an incident or you're looking for an incident and you can't find it, don't call back to Alina and say, hey, can you check with St. Croix County and see, get on the St. Croix County frequency and ask them that. We do that every day. So some crews are really good about it and other crews aren't, but it is a policy in our system. When you're responding to St. Croix County, Washington County, you flip over to their channel. So in our radios, it scans. So in the portable I have here, the St. Croix County channel scans in that frequency. So I hear everything that happens on the fire channel. It's just automatic. I can shut that scan off, but the ambulances are the same way. So again, the technology is there for that communication piece. Yeah.
Anybody else, any questions?
Hi, Don. I just have a question. My name's Ray Knapp. I'm representing the town of Troy today.
Okay.
And I just, this is the first time I've seen this letter, so I'm probably going to ask a pretty simplistic question here, but from what I hear you say, the calls that you're now taking in St. Croix County, right?
Yep.
If a resident was to call in, they would call into St. Croix County Dispatch.
Yep.
St. Croix County Dispatch would call Alina.
Yep.
And then Alina would dispatch
The ambulance.
the ambulance. And that's exactly the same process that you imagine would have taken place if the service area expanded.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And to your knowledge, that process has been working effectively for both St. Croix County and Lakeview Ambulance to date?
I can't speak for St. Croix County. Based on the letter, it's not working for them.
Okay, but you've not gotten complaints from you've never gotten a complaint
from anyone.
Okay.
And you bring up a good point, Ray. The time frame that we get the call, Alina has a policy to put the call out, to put it out to the crew within 30 seconds. Their average time is 15 seconds. So again, when we monitor the channels, I hear all the channels, and a lot of times, at least 50% of the time, Lakeview gets the call before the county's putting it out to the fire department, not just St. Croix County, but in Washington County. In fact, the day that we switched over from Washington County to St. Croix County, I was in the dispatch center, and we wanted to make sure that process went good. And so we had people in Alina and we had people in Washington County. I was in the Washington County Center, and we were waiting for that first call, and all of a sudden over my radio, we get paged by Alina for a call in Stillwater. And if you could see the face on the sheriff and the rest of the people there, jaws dropped to the floor, looking around, where'd that come from? And the dispatcher hung up the phone and said, "Hey, I just gave you guys a call. We already had it. It was already dispatched to us." Again, Alina does almost 100,000 EMS calls a year. That's all they do is EMS. They're very good at what they do, and we pay a lot of money to do it, and it's worth the money we pay to do it.
I just have one other question then.
Yep.
Okay, so then I also heard you say that Lakeview Ambulance Service would have no problem giving St. Croix County Dispatch the ability to listen in to the dispatching that's going on. Is that correct?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
The simple fix is we have an extra one of these radios. I can bring it up to St. Croix County. When I leave here and drop it off there, they're going to hear everything. And they would have the ability to actually communicate with us if they chose to. But that's a Band-Aid fix.
And would they hear only the things that are being dispatched
Yeah.
in St. Croix County, so they wouldn't hear all the chatter all over the place?
No, they would hear it. They would hear everything because all of our dispatching is on one frequency.
I see, okay.
So they would hear everything that Lakeview does.
That Lakeview would be,
Yeah.
okay.
So, yeah, you wouldn't be able to separate. I guess if they were in dispatch and we just got a 911 call and it's in Lakeview service area, you could turn the radio on and listen.
Uh-huh, okay.
There's another system I'll speak of it, but I don't know that I have the permission to do it, but there is an actual CAD interface that we could, the technology is there. It's a web-based interface where they could actually see on a screen everything. They could see our ambulances moving. They could see where they're at when they take the call. That is capital equipment that's owned by Alina that then I pay for. We have that system in our base in Stillwater. So I think there's a possibility that we could even look into the options of that. And then there's just no question. They'll actually see where the ambulances are. They would know when ambulances were out on calls.
So that would be a view-only kind of a system, so you'd be able to view but not...
They could hear it too.
Hear
Yeah.
and view. Oh,
Yeah.
I see. Oh,
Yeah.
that sounds good.
One of the other things that I want to bring up here, that an issue that we have is just notifying dispatch anytime that the ambulance goes out of service, goes on a transfer, the vehicle's out for maintenance, the vehicle's unavailable for the day, we're going to need to let them know that all the time. Again, that's something that does not happen today in the county, to the extremes that I read it here in the letter. And then the other, I think, more concerning piece in here is that under the new requirements for Lakeview, if there's a call in our area and St. Croix County calls, we call St. Croix County and say we're en route to the call, the dispatcher will then decide if we're coming from too far away and cancel Lakeview and start another ambulance service. And to me, that piece and that last paragraph where we're not going to give you the calls anymore, I think are very concerning. And for those current providers in St. Joe's and Somerset or areas, I think that's great concern that you need to have. Because in your area, there is nobody closer, 9 times out of 10, maybe even more. So,
John, do the fire departments utilize that GPS system at all? So are they able to track where the ambulances are too?
No.
They don't utilize it, or they can't?
Well, they don't have the capability to do it.
John, what other EMS services are there in St. Croix County other than St. Croix EMS that currently operate?
You have New Richmond area ambulance, you got Baldwin, River Falls that covers both Pearson and portions of St. Croix County. Osceola's Polk. Did I get them all? Glenwood City?
Okay. Do you know if the county is requiring those ambulance services to do the same things that they're asking you to do?
No, I talked to the leaders in those organizations. They've never heard anything about that before.
So it's specifically directed to Lakeview?
To our operation, yes.
You said you were going to offer some solutions. Do you want to wait until whoever speaks on behalf of the county says their position before you respond?
Yeah, I can, but part of the solution I already talked about is putting a radio into their dispatch center, or if we can put that CAD interface in there. I know, their system, it's tight, there's not a lot of room in there. It would require a computer screen and an actual computer. The computer is smaller than a piece of paper, but and you'd have to have a dedicated outside internet line for it. But then it's all of our dispatch. You see who the crews are, you see everything. It's the entire CAD system that we're being dispatched by. That would be to me, that would be the best solution. It would be costly for us to do, but I think is part of that operation. I think it's an expense that we could look into.
Any other questions?
Oh, I got one other thing to say. So part of your licensing process in the state of Wisconsin is you have to provide certain information to the state regarding your license before your license is approved. And part of that process is the communication and dispatching. So there is 8 areas that are identified under DHS 110.34 in the state of Wisconsin rules, and it's all about communications and dispatching. And in our plan, as long as we've been dispatched through the county, St. Croix County, our plan, the only changes have been if we change the radio system, but our plan is approved by the state of Wisconsin. And the state of Wisconsin has our operation plan in their office. So to me, if the state that regulates ambulance operations has approved our communications plan, how does a county have the authority to override what the state requires? It's my personal question.
Questions? Anybody? Anybody want to respond from the county?
I think, first of all, we were not notified of this meeting. I heard it through the grapevine last night. This morning, I went online and discovered that about 11 o'clock, that this was related to communications, and we came over for the meeting. So in some respects, I am not prepared to respond, but I will respond to this. We do require, with the exception of canceling Lakeview Ambulance, we do require all of these things from all of our other ambulance services. They use our pagers, they use our communication frequencies, they tell us when they're in service, they tell us when they're out of service. All of our ambulance services do that. I think perhaps a little background is in order because there appears to be some misunderstanding. In 1979, when dispatch was created, we had a public safety communications plan. As part of that plan, every EMS provider in St. Croix County was required to respond to our calls by pager. At the time, then known as Stillwater Ambulance, was exempted for the reason that it was not based in St. Croix County, and it handled, as Mr. Mueller said, it handled just a handful of calls into St. Croix County. Last year in 2016, I believe you responded, or Lakeview EMS responded to 482 calls, if I'm not mistaken, to Somerset and St. Joe townships for EMS calls. We have continued to contact Alina in St. Paul via telephone because we still consider, although I think it's a burden to our staff, and with our new EMD, which I've alluded to in the letter to the mayor, and I'm happy to share with anybody who wants a copy of it, the county utilizes emergency medical dispatch protocols. All of our dispatchers who utilize it are certified, and I'm not going to get into a contest about who has a better dispatch center. I think that's fruitless. Needless to say, we run a good dispatch center that handles thousands of calls each year. But getting back to my point about the 482 calls, you handle 482 calls into St. Croix County. We've allowed Lakeview to be dispatched through Alina because the volume wasn't that great. However, the city of Hudson handled, Brandon, I think 1,667 calls in 2016. When you add that to the 482 calls of St. Joe and Somerset, you're now in excess of, or in the area of 2,200 calls annually. That's beyond what I would consider a safe margin to take a telephone call, ascertain all of the information from the caller, then pick up the phone and transfer all that information to Alina, who then has to transfer it a third time to the EMS crews. As an attorney who specializes or who has specialized in the past in 911 liability, I would greatly counsel against that. I think our procedures of paging and using the emergency medical dispatch protocols to update the crews as they go along is a much better procedure than the current procedure we use to page Lakeview EMS. And if you want a dispatcher error lawsuit, you will get one no faster than trying to pass information for the third time. So I think it behooves the city to consider how the calls are actually received by the EMS crews. In terms of standing in downtown Somerset with your 800 megahertz radio, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I've been in downtown Somerset, and I know exactly what you reference when you say that our officers have to hold their portables up. St. Croix County is almost in the final stages of an $8 million radio system upgrade. We will have 14 radio sites, 12 of which will simulcast broadcasts, including a brand new tower in the village of Somerset, or 125 feet outside the village limits. Our new simulcast system will no longer require our officers to have to hunt for a radio frequency or to hold their portables up in the air. So our new system will be state-of-the-art and will resolve those problems that you indicated. I think when you talk about like the warehouse fire, I wasn't here, but maybe Mr. Anderson can respond to this. Was that a patch call?
When it initially started, there was a grand total of 53 different fire departments from all over the state of Wisconsin and into the metro, like Mr. Muller indicated. There was patches that we worked with Washington County on the 800 system. They were patching the fire tactical channels into their system, to the Wisconsin system, allowing the agencies to have the interagency communication. So that was done at that time.
And those patches are only used for what I would consider the unusual emergencies. Everyday EMS traffic is not going to be patched. So the reason that warehouse fire worked so well in terms of communications is the county set up a patch and it worked exactly like it was supposed to. We use it for high-speed pursuits, bank robberies, things of that nature that are unusual in character and are not everyday activities. When you talk about monitoring a line of dispatch, my dispatchers are too darn busy to be monitoring every page call that would come through on a line as 800 megahertz system. The system is set up so that the dispatchers have enough to do without monitoring yet another radio system. And there's no need for it. The city of Hudson currently has pagers that they use for their crews, and when you transfer the assets from the city of Hudson, the ambulance rigs that come with VHF radios, you will also, I presume, get all of the pagers. Those pagers can be used because that's how St. Croix County dispatches. I'm not going to get into your question about the legal authority of the county to require it. The county dispatches in the way the county dispatches. It's the way they will dispatch in the future, and we can get a legal opinion from the city attorney, and we can get a legal opinion from the county attorney, and they may differ. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter what the legal opinion is, and it doesn't matter what the state of Wisconsin says, because the state of Wisconsin approves your EMS plan. They do not approve your communications plan. St. Croix County has a dispatch center that receives all 911 calls in the county. It was approved by the city of Hudson way back when in the 70s, when the Central Dispatch Center was created, that would be where calls would be handled and how they would be dispatched. Like I said, we grandfathered in Lakeview Ambulance, at the time Stillwater Ambulance, because they did not have a permanent presence in the county and they had so few calls. You're now approaching 500 calls a year, and that's just for St. Joe Township and Somerset. And we may even have to talk about the future going forward, even if Hudson EMS doesn't come on board. So those are my preliminary comments, not having been prepped for this meeting. My concern is we're kind of confusing apples with oranges here. St. Croix County handles dispatch calls for all the EMS providers in the same fashion. And in my letter, the only difference is the paragraph about where you're coming from. Because under your dynamic deployment model, you may not be in the county when that call is paged. You may be in North St. Paul, may be between North St. Paul and Stillwater. The county will have to look at that and determine whether or not you are the closest unit and make a decision. I think what the county is trying to do is ensure that county residents outside the city of Hudson, and it's the only reason that we're at this table, is because it doesn't end at the city borders. county residents who will be affected by this change. We want to ensure that they receive the service they should receive in a timely fashion. Your question about why delays, if there have been delays, hasn't been brought to your attention by the dispatch center, it's because it's not really their job. If St. Joe EMS first responders or Somerset or other entities have concerns, they bring those concerns to you. We as a dispatch center, because we dispatch for all of them, don't bring those concerns to you. But as you know, there have been concerns over the years, and they have been voiced. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I will turn the table back over to you.
Okay, so, just one second. I want to get back to the 800 megahertz system then. So you're saying that even when you have the capability, you would choose not to do that to accommodate that?
I'm not sure what you mean by the capability.
Well, I think that Mr. Anderson said that come July that you would have the capacity to...
Come July, in our new dispatch center, in our consoles, it's conceivable at some expense, and I don't know what that expense would be, is that we could add in the radios that Mr. Mueller references, but we will not immediately have that capability.
Okay. Any questions? John?
Can I just respond to Stevens?
If it's the concern of the county to determine who's the closest ambulance service to a call, then today, when the city of Hudson needs mutual aid and Lakeview EMS is the closest provider, why does the county not require them to call Lakeview, and Lakeview never gets called for mutual aid to Hudson, being the closest provider and the provider that has more resources to give to the county than any other provider in the county, but yet we're never utilized?
Let me say one thing at the outset, John, and that is that there is no discussion about the quality of service that Lakeview provides. I think your service is as good as any other service, including the city of Hudson. So this isn't about the quality of care provided by your medics. In general, when mutual aid is requested, it is generally told to us by the EMS provider, we are not available, send River Falls, we are not available, send to Richmond. So more often than not, what occurs is the EMS provider is telling us, we don't have the crew, we don't have the staff, please send X, whatever X may be. If it's an unknown, the dispatchers will attempt to determine who the closest entity is. And frankly, I'll be honest with you, our dispatchers are a little gun shy of Lakeview because its history is that sometimes it's not always prompt. And I'm telling you that flat out on the table.
That's a lie. I'm
All,
sorry.
call it what you want. All I'm telling you is what I know from 40 years of experience.
You don't know. We can look at the data.
Unfortunately, because you don't check, you were talking about having our frequency in your radio. But in over half the calls that you handle in the county, we don't hear from you. When we dispatch Lakeview Ambulance and we call Alina, that phone call with Alina is oftentimes the last time we hear from the Lakeview EMS system. And your medics, as you alluded to, some check in and some don't. So it's difficult for us to keep data because we don't know where you're en route from, when you're en route, when you arrive, when you clear the scene, and where you're going.
The last thing I'm going to say, our data is pulled off of a legal document. So all EMS reports are considered a legal document. Our documents are not altered. Our data is what it is. And it's actual data that's pulled off the system that is sent to the state, both the state of Minnesota and Wisconsin. I have our documents. I know what our response times are. And I'd gladly sit down with anyone that wants to see that. We will share that data.
I just have one question. Calls that you respond to that are over 20 minutes, you consider an anomaly and you disregard in your data?
No,
Okay.
Nope, I've shared all of our data with the city of Hudson. They have one report was over 300 pages of every single call that we responded to in 2016. Every call. Nothing separated out of there. The volume's there, you can see it. Do we have calls that are over 20 minutes? Yes, we do. We have calls in Somerset that are more than 20 miles away. You can't respond to areas of your community that are 20 miles away in less than 20 minutes. Do we have calls over 30 minutes? Weather-related, we might have 1 or 2 a year, and they're all in there. I don't hide any data. There's absolutely no reason for us to hide the data. I think if you compared our operation to the rest of the county and true response times, I think you'll see that we're performing at the higher level. Okay?
That may be, but we don't have the data to support it. Thank you.
Questions? Anybody?
I just have a comment here. I mean, since this is a meeting about communications, it sounds like maybe the two of you should be sharing more communications if they have all this data available and you're saying you're not looking at it, you don't know what they're doing. Sounds like there's an honest effort here to at least make it available, so hopefully that the dispatch center will look at it.
I think,
No.
Mr. Mayor and Ray, I think the bottom line is, what I'm hearing from John is that he wants us to change our procedures for them. That's not how the county operates. We just spent $8 million of county taxpayer dollars to upgrade our system, to certify all of our dispatchers in emergency medical dispatch, to improve our paging capabilities, to improve our two-way radio capabilities. We are not going to turn around and change systems. The county has a system. It operates with it. It intends to continue to operate with it. And I'll be blunt. You want to be a player in St. Croix County, then you'll play by the county rules. And if that sounds cold, that's the way it is.
Steve, I don't know that that's actually what's being discussed here right now. What's being discussed is that if a good chunk of your county, the service area right now that's being represented by and served by the St. Croix EMS, if it is found that it is necessary for us to do something different, it's not Lakeview asking you to do that.
And what are you proposing, Mr. Mayor?
It's us that perhaps are put into a difficult situation that is turning to the county and saying, we have a situation where perhaps we need to get a different service and we need your cooperation and your help. And that's what we're asking. It's not Lakeview. So.
And we're fully cognizant of that. But my point is, we have a system in place. So what I'm hearing today is, from Mr. Mueller, is they want us to adopt or adapt to the Alliance system without looking back at our system, as Ray said, sit down and discuss it. Our system is in place. Our system works today for everybody that uses it.
Steve, this is the perhaps, this would be the taxpayers of your county and municipality members of your county asking you to do that.
And we're happy to look.
And that's where you're going to be intransigent. You're going to be intransigent with your taxpayers.
Oh, no, exactly the opposite. Our taxpayers, everyone in this room that lives in this county, just coughed up a portion of that $8 million.
Right.
So what's above and beyond that? Now, we're happy to look at adding an 800 megahertz radio into our system. We have some now, as we've indicated, Mr. Anderson indicated, that we do patch calls and things of that nature. But if we're going to upgrade our consoles and make changes for Lakeview, I can tell you what the taxpayers out in the county are going to say. You just spent $8 million and now you want some more money because Hudson's decided to change its service? So somehow we have to respond to that.
What are we talking about for a cost?
Oh, I have no idea. Like I said, I didn't know about this until about an hour and a half ago.
Well, I would think that knowing what the system is over there, that at some point in time, if you were saying before you wrote your letter that you could not accommodate that or would not accommodate that, that you would have had some idea what the cost would be.
Let's put it this way. There will be a cost above the $8 million that we've already spent. So if we're going to justify spending additional county tax dollars, there has to be a pretty good reason why. And that first question that's going to be asked is, why can't they use the existing system? And I haven't heard anything today from Lakeview that they can't use the existing system.
Terry, I just have a communication question. There must be a certain amount of employee time that goes into monitoring and managing the 1,600 EMS calls that you're presently dealing with St. Croix EMS.
Absolutely.
If you look at those dollars and compare it against, the savings of offloading that to a different system, the Alina system, and then using those hours to better track with Alina what's going on through some, shared, view-only ambulance, distribution system. Could you put a number to that? I think that's what Rich is saying. Is there, this is, all of us put plans in place, and plans are just that, right? You plan for something, and then something happens, and you look at your plan, you figure out, okay, how do I work with something else? So, I mean, there must be some hours that go into that. Just a question.
I understand
Yeah.
your question,
Yeah.
and to be honest with you, under our current model with Alina, we spend more time with Alina calls than we do with Baldwin to Richmond and Glenwood City, because we have the ability to page them and put the information out immediately. We don't have to go to the old-fashioned way of picking up the phone and calling to downtown St. Paul to Alina. So by shifting Alina onto our system, we will reduce the amount of time we spend on calls.
I'd like to ask a question about the role of the dispatcher. As you get the initial call and you dispatch a service, but is it not true that the dispatcher is frequently on the line with that original call during the process until someone gets there? Is
Is the dispatcher on call with the original caller?
Yes.
Yes. Under the emergency medical dispatch protocols, our dispatcher generally will stay on line with the original 911 caller to ascertain additional information, updated information, conditions change. They'll also do two other things. They'll give post-dispatch instructions and pre-arrival instructions. So it's not a matter of the old days when you called 911 30 years ago and said, I need an ambulance at 123 Main Street, and you hung up the phone, and we sent out an ambulance. The dispatchers are certified and trained under these emergency medical dispatch protocols to stay on line with the caller and ascertain that information. We now have to transmit that information to the ambulance crews, or we try to transmit that information so we can update the crews. The crews, I don't know if anybody here in this room other than our medics have ever spent any time going through a rig, but that rig across the street is equipped with an enormous amount of equipment. The more information I can give, or our dispatchers can give an arriving medic, the more prepared they are when they arrive at the scene to go to bay 6, door 5, whatever it is, grab a bag. They know they have a 3-year-old who's not breathing. They don't need an adult trauma kit, they need a pediatric trauma kit. So all that additional information that's obtained is conveyed to the incoming crews. The problem we have today with Alina is if we want to give that additional information to Lakeview, most often we have to pick up the phone and call back to Alina by phone to give them the information. They turn around and radio their crews if we can't reach the Lakeview crew on the radio. So yes, we do try to stay on the phone with the caller and obtain additional information.
Thank you. I think that says, that to me is the biggest reason why the Lakeview system would have to comply with the St. Croix system, not the other way around.
Absolutely.
Any other questions? Anybody else? John, you were up to the podium, did you have anything more to say?
I was just going to comment, the radio system needs to be upgraded regardless of this deal with Hudson or not. So to say you're going to put $8 million into a radio system, it's going to happen regardless if Lakeview's in the picture or not, correct?
In what sense, John?
You were referring to, with this $8 million of taxpayer money that we're putting into the radio system, and Lakeview's not going to use it, is not fair to the taxpayers. Regardless of us being on the system, the radio system needs to be upgraded. I think all of us can agree with that.
Absolutely. We're going to upgrade regardless,
Right.
regardless of your position. Now, what you said earlier about potentially installing an 800 megahertz radio into one of the Armor radios into our dispatch center full-time, that possibility exists, that we could talk to you on that, provided that the dispatchers don't have to listen to all the other traffic that goes with Alina and with Lakeview.
Correct. Again, our frequency is it's a private channel assigned to Lakeview through the state of Minnesota, so it is only our channel. We do share it with our providers in Minnesota. They have access to it, but all of their transmissions, if they try and hail us, are done on another channel. So we have 4 channels on the 800 system. The dispatch channel is strictly for dispatch. Dispatch or emergency use if you need it, but so you would hear our dispatch channel. I wanted to clarify that the radio system, regardless of who comes on there, still needs to be upgraded, and it's going to be upgraded.
We're still going to upgrade and finish our $8 million upgrade regardless of what the city of Hudson does in terms of this ambulance contract.
Right. And the other comment I want to make too is today, under the procedure in St. Croix County, when an ambulance service is paged out, they're paged out twice. So they repeat the same information 2 times. In our operation, that wouldn't be done. So you're going to knock some time off of there, and I think if there's time that's taken up by calling Alina on the phone, I'm thinking you guys just push a button. You don't have to dial a number. So you push the button, call Alina, you give them the information, but in the current system today, you page that out twice. And I have been in the dispatch center, and I listen every day on the radio. You guys are extremely busy. The dispatchers are always busy, and I agree, there's a lot of traffic on the radio, and you can't deny that pulling EMS off the frequency would not clear up valuable time in the dispatch center.
Well,
You
but
can't
that's
deny that.
Thank you, John. That's a trade-off. One procedure for another. And procedures take time. One procedure takes more time than the other. And the second page generally involves updated information, by the way.
You know, I got a question, if you want, first of all, Terry, for John. I just want to make this clear. Was your answer then, if they were to utilize your 800 frequency, that they would not have to be listening to all the other calls going on throughout there? It would be specific to the service area?
No, they would hear all the Lakeview calls.
Okay, well, all
Yeah,
Lakeview.
Yeah, just Lakeview.
But John, that's
We're-
10,000 calls?
It's 7,000 right now, but if Hudson's added to it, we're pushing 10,000, yeah.
And
Okay.
Yeah.
frankly, I don't see that happening because we're not going to want to listen. The dispatchers are going to tune you out. They have to, because you just said they're too busy.
Terry?
I just wanted clarification. You know, Mr. Mueller spoke of being at Washington County when they did that test, and Alina notified his crew before they paged out the rescue unit, or however it was termed. Current policy in our center is when they process the 911 call, the dispatcher will start processing the call. When it's medical, it goes to EMD. They start following the protocol. I had to take and tell them to slow down because they were so wanting to notify the EMS services right away to get them out the door. I wanted them to slow down so they could get that determinant code. After a certain number of questions, the protocol gets assigned. It reconfigures and lets us know who to send at what determinant code, depending on whether they go lights and siren or not, depending on the code. Right now, it's about 20 seconds to about 50 seconds when the page goes the first time to the staff. They're still processing the call, finishing up. Depending on how the caller's answering the questions, the call could take a right at the Y in the road or a left, depending on. It might not change, but it's that additional information getting sent out. In the cases where Lakeview's dealing with Somerset and St. Joe now, within that 20 seconds to 50 seconds, St. Joe first responders or Somerset Rescue is being notified. Then the phone call has to be made by either the person that did the page or somebody else to get Alana notified. It's that delay that I'm worried about. You know, I want to make that window of notification smaller because time is the essence in any sort of a medical. So that's my point of view.
Okay, anybody else? Any other questions? Okay, that's it. I appreciate everybody being here. Thank you.